All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Dr. Ryan Sousley. I'm here with my good friend, Daniel.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
And today we are talking all about heart health.
Oh, buddy, I need it.
So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is about heart disease, like the actual disease of the heart, because it's the number one killer in the United States today. In fact, if you look at, what the highest risk of death is in the United States today, it's heart disease. In fact, according to the American Heart Association, it's 1 out of 4 people. And they're projecting now
25% of people die from heart disease?
25%. So it's 1 out of 4. In fact, this podcast is probably going to be 45 minutes to an hour long.
Jeez.
And statistically, one person dies of heart disease every 37 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a lot of people. 60 to 70 people are going to die from heart disease just by the time we're done with the podcast today.
Wow. Buckle up if you're listening. This is going to be a doozy.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a big deal. It's the number one killer in the U.S. today. And they're actually projecting that it's going to double within the next 20 years. And
Is that based on past rates?
Just based on past rates and also other current trends of what's going on with health and disease and our lifestyle and our culture and everything else.
And this isn't a fringe group. This is American Heart Association.
Oh, yeah, this is American Heart. You can look this up. CDC stats, American Heart Association.
Crazy.
So it's a big deal. The problem with heart disease is it's a silent killer. Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, these degenerative illnesses are considered to be silent killers, which means you don't typically feel the warning signs until you're, way downriver and the disease is totally manifested in your body. And then at that point, you're trying to play catch up and you're trying to treat the disease and get rid of the disease. Unfortunately, most of the time it's too late. In fact, statistically, 8 out of 10 people that find out they have heart disease, they find out when they have their first heart attack. So it's literally the first symptom that you have of heart disease is your first heart attack. Ugh. Which is nuts to think about because, again, according to the American Heart Association, 18 to 20 years is what it takes of developing heart disease or atherosclerosis or coronary artery disease before you finally have that symptom.
Jeez.
And 8 out of 10 people find out when they have their first heart attack. So, we're gonna talk all about heart disease today. We're gonna unpack a lot of different things about common myths. We're gonna talk about how cholesterol is not the bad guy and how cholesterol has been vilified. But
there's good cholesterol, right?
Well, there's good cholesterol, and I would actually argue that all cholesterol is good cholesterol in the right proportions. HDL to LDL and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna dig into that, but we're also gonna talk about a condition that I actually think is more relevant, powerful, and important, which is disease of the heart, and not your physical heart, but your metaphorical heart. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more at the end. But I think when it comes to heart disease, people have to realize that your heart is a muscle, and so just like any other muscle in your body, it's use it or lose it. But your metaphorical heart, your spiritual heart, your will and your drive to succeed in life.
Mind, will, emotions, right?
Yeah. Having heart is also like a muscle. And so we're going to talk about the fact that in America today, the same things that are causing us to be soft and weak and more susceptible to actual heart disease are also a manifestation of the fact that we have lost heart. Not our physical heart, but our spiritual heart, our metaphorical heart, our will and our drive to persevere and to push ourselves to do hard things.
Yeah.
And it's another situation where it's use it or lose it. So we're going to talk about the value of intentionally making yourself do hard things in order to train heart.
I'm wildly uncomfortable. This is going to be great.
This is going to be awesome.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So I'm going to go through just...
Because one of us is a little softer than the other.
That's okay. I mean, we all have a point A. We all have a point B.
Yeah.
And this podcast is all about bridging that gap.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, nobody's perfect, and it's not... Optimal health is not a destination, it's a pursuit. And I actually think that's the fun of life.
Yeah.
Nobody ever arrives, and there's always another level. Even if you take the most elite athletes on the planet, they're always trying to find that next level. And that pursuit of the next level, I think, is what brings joy and excitement and, interest
Yeah.
to life or
Yeah.
intrigue to life, because there's always another level. So whether you're in the basement or you're already on the top floor, there's always, there's always,
I still live in my mom's basement.
there's always another level. That's weird. Anyway, so just a couple of things. I want to just read off a couple of statistics because I think these are really important. So listen to this. American Heart Association is estimating that by 2030, 40% of the United States will have some kind of cardiovascular disease. Right now, it's only 25%. So that's 2 out of 5 people. So that's almost going to double just in the next 9 years now. And this actually came out in 2010, so it might be worse now. This one's a big deal too, because when it comes to health and investing in your health, one of the biggest objections that I get from people is that, man, it's really expensive to be healthy. It's expensive to eat organic. It's expensive to buy non-GMO or to work out all the time or have the right equipment at home or take high quality supplements. Or go see, a holistic health practitioner, because typically insurance doesn't cover outside of the box, healthcare, even though outside the box healthcare is far more productive in terms of actually producing optimal health in people. But listen to this. So money is a big deal, and again, this is according to the American Heart Association, medical costs of cardiovascular disease are expected to triple in the next 10 years, going from 272.5 billion, and this is, for the US at large, to 818.1 billion. So more than triple.
Just shy of $1 trillion.
Just in the next 10 years, right? And so that's taxpayers' money. That's insurance premiums. That's out-of-pocket costs. Yeah. And again, everyone's worried about the cost of being healthy. And I always tell my patients that, listen, we all pay for our health one way or another. You're going to either pay for it on the front end to prevent sickness and disease, or you're going to pay for it on the back end to treat it once you have it. Unfortunately, even right now, 1 out of 4 of us is paying for it on the back end because we have heart disease. And if we don't do something about it, in the next 10 years, it's going to be 2 out of 5 of us, 40% of the population.
That's crazy.
It's just astronomically expensive. So yeah, you got to invest a little bit on the front end to make sure that you don't end up there, but it's so much more worth it. It'll save you a fortune on the back end, and you don't have heart disease, which is the whole point.
Yeah, that's a good benefit.
Right. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about cholesterol.
Yeah.
So if you were to just ask the average person out on the street, what are your thoughts or perceptions of cholesterol?
I'm literally sitting right here. Ask me. So what do I think about cholesterol? Well, I think if you eat too many eggs, you get too much cholesterol. That's something I believe. Something else I believe is that cholesterol, you want your cholesterol numbers to be low, and that stress can increase them, and lack of sleep can increase your cholesterol numbers. And generally, it's the cause of the heart attack. It's like the plaque inside your arteries that kills you. So that's what I think. That's what I know about it.
Well, and that's the biggest misnomer or misinformation, is that cholesterol causes heart disease or cholesterol causes heart attacks, and it's just not the truth, and a lot of this I took from Dr. Jack Wolfson, who's just a brilliant guy. He's a board certified cardiologist. He's the author of The Paleocardiologist. He's married to a chiropractor, which makes me like him even more. But he, his short story essentially is that he was a conventional cardiologist and was for a long time, and just kind of saw the detriment and the downfall of traditional medicine, and really wanted to actually help people instead of just treating symptoms and disease and fixing people once they were broken or after the heart attack. And so anyway, his book is just chock full of amazing information.
What's the book called?
It's called The Paleocardiologist.
Oh, got it.
I reference that book often, especially when it comes to heart health issues. But anyway, so a lot of this stuff, comes from his book, but people just need to understand that cholesterol is, let me back up. Anything that your body produces is not bad for you. It's kind of like
I didn't know that your body produced cholesterol. I thought
your body makes cholesterol. Yeah. So your liver.
Well, your body might make cholesterol.
You eat things that help your body produce cholesterol, but actually most of the cholesterol that you consume gets either expelled through breath, which most people don't realize. Over 40% of the cholesterol that you consume actually gets expelled through exhalation.
What?
And then the majority of the rest of the cholesterol that you consume, just passes through your system because your liver makes cholesterol. Now you might absorb and assimilate nutrients that help your liver create cholesterol later on down the road.
Oh, so you could say like I eat, breathe, and bleep cholesterol, and you would be right.
You poop it out. Yeah. So just back to the philosophical statement that your body never makes something that's bad for you. That would be like saying, liver bile is bad, or the enzymes that are produced by your body are bad for you. They're never bad. They're bad out of proportion. And, your lifestyle can affect the way that those elements are utilized or, stored in your body. But cholesterol is not the bad guy. So if you didn't know, or if people don't know, cholesterol is literally just a soft, white, waxy substance that's made by your liver, and it's made for repair jobs. Think about it like wall putty or like drywall putty, right? Like you back something into the drywall, or you have a big hole in there from a screw that you pulled out or whatnot. You put some putty in there and it repairs the hole.
Got it.
Cholesterol does the same thing essentially. So like if you were to take the cholesterol levels of a woman who had just given birth, her cholesterol levels would be sky high.
Really?
Because her body's trying to repair and recover from giving birth. It's an extremely physically traumatic experience. There's a lot of recovering and repairing that has to be done. Same thing like when I tore my Achilles tendon, I never had it checked, but inevitably, my cholesterol went up because my body's trying to repair this really severe injury. So your body,
so it like repairs like tendons too, and
all sorts of stuff. Yeah,
outside the veins.
Yes, yeah. Cholesterol is produced to help reduce inflammation as well. So people that are chronically inflamed have typically higher levels of cholesterol, and so that's the thing. You go to a doctor and they look at, this limited number of metrics or this limited spectrum of metrics, either through blood work or whatever else. And, you get put into this box. It's like, oh, you have high cholesterol. High cholesterol has been correlated to or with, heart disease or heart attack. And so we got to do something to get your cholesterol down. And the question about what's causing your cholesterol to be high in the first place,
like if you had just got injured last week, it might be up because of that.
Yeah, exactly. it'd be ridiculous to give a woman who had just given birth, a statin drug because her cholesterol is high. Wow. It's like, well, duh, her cholesterol is high because her body's trying to repair. Your body's doing something smart. So back to my point, the body, and fundamentally, I feel like people need to make this decision in their mind and then anchor to this decision when it comes to any healthcare decision you're making for yourself from now on. And that decision is my body always doing something smart, or is my body always smart, or is it always stupid? Because it can't be both.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So my point in saying that is if your cholesterol is high, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it depends.
Exactly.
Got it.
Why is it high?
Right. So maybe people need to start trusting that their bodies are doing the right thing, and maybe we're giving it false signals, or we're testing and making bad decisions based on
or we're interpreting those signs for being the problem when they're not the problem. They're just representative of a problem.
Right. It's just a response to something.
Same thing with a fever. Is a fever a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I do know that it's a good thing because means your body's fighting something off.
Right. Bacteria and viruses can't live in elevated temperatures, which is why your body does that smart thing. It would be the same thing to ask the question, if you go out in the cold and it's 20 degrees, you don't have a shirt on, and your body starts shivering, is that smart or stupid?
It's smart.
If it's 100 degrees and you start sweating, is that smart or stupid?
Yeah.
So the thing is, if your body is sometimes smart, it's always smart.
Yeah.
It can't be sometimes smart and sometimes stupid. And the way that we treat our bodies in America today is we get diagnosed with these conditions or these diseases based on these limited metrics or these limited scopes of evaluation. And we treat the symptom thinking that the body is messing up. Oh, the body's making too much cholesterol. We need to force a pharmaceutical down the throat or into your bloodstream in order to force it back down. Same with blood pressure, same with blood sugar. It's like, well, the body's doing something in response to its environment in order to restore homeostasis. And that's the thing. Your body is so intelligently wired to adapt and overcome in any situation. Just like shivering in the cold is good for you because it generates heat. Sweating in the heat is good for you because it expels heat. Your body always does whatever it can to restore and retain homeostasis. So cholesterol is not the bad guy. That's the whole point that I'm making here. So it's a soft, white, waxy substance that's used for repair jobs. Here's some interesting research. Low cholesterol is a sign of liver dysfunction and is a risk factor for cancer and overall death. So having too low cholesterol, because if you think about it, cholesterol needs to be on hand in order for you to be able to repair from injuries or accidents or even help fight disease or reduce reduce inflammation. So if you have a lower, supply of
too little of
this repair substance, you're not going to do a great job of fighting these different things. Here's some other stuff. There's a higher death, and this would be interesting for people to know. More people die from heart attacks with normal cholesterol than high cholesterol in the United States every year.
That does not compute.
And again, you can look all this up, American Heart Association, CDC. There's a higher overall death rate from just all causes of disease with people with low cholesterol versus high cholesterol. Same thing we just talked about, because you have less repair substance on hand. And it's not cholesterol that actually clogs your arteries, because that's what people think. It's like, I got too much putty or too much plaque sitting there in my arteries. It's not.
My little builders are like, we're going to have to fix everything. So I have tons of it.
Cholesterol doesn't just stick around in your arteries unless the cholesterol gets oxidized. And the oxidation of cholesterol is actually caused by sugar and stress and lack of sleep and lack of exercise.
I have tons of all those factors.
All those lifestyle factors, right?
Really
and so,
big numbers.
And so cholesterol is not the bad guy. It's the oxidation of cholesterol that results in problems. So what we're going to unpack today and give people some action steps for is how to not oxidize cholesterol, or how to utilize cholesterol in a good way, and how to not, have cholesterol
is it reversible?
Turn into the bad guy. It totally is. Yeah.
I feel like totally every podcast is going to be like, I have that. Is that reversible? Can we fix that?
Here's another interesting thing that'll be pertinent to all the fellas, especially if you're over the age of 40, because this is a really huge issue, and it's getting bigger and bigger every year. But testosterone, so low T. So testosterone is made from cholesterol. So again, you don't want low cholesterol. In fact, if you had low cholesterol, you'd most likely have low T. And for women, it's progesterone and estrogen. Same thing. Those are all sex hormones that are all produced by cholesterol.
What?
So you want cholesterol in your body. You just want the right type of cholesterol. You want the right ratios of HDL and LDL. And again, so we're going to talk about some lifestyle things to achieve that. But again, cholesterol is not the bad guy. If you had no cholesterol, you wouldn't make it. Listen to this. Sugar consumption stimulates HMG-CoA reductase enzyme to produce excess cholesterol, meaning when you eat sugar, your body produces more cholesterol. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense because, and you probably know this, Daniel, but when you consume sugar, do you know what that causes in your body?
Inflammation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did know that.
Exactly. When inflammation goes up, guess what else goes up?
Your cholesterol, because
cholesterol.
We're going to have problems here.
Because we're repairing stuff.
Yeah.
Right? If you tear your Achilles tendon like I do, tons of inflammation. If you eat a lot of sugar, systemic inflammation. It's the same thing.
If you tear the inside of your body apart
your
with
liver,
lots of sugar?
Exactly, yeah. Your liver doesn't know the difference between inflammation from sugar or inflammation from an injury. And so your liver just sits there and cranks out cholesterol because it's trying to repair all this inflammation that's happening in your body.
Like what a soldier. It's gone above and beyond to keep me alive to where we are today.
And that's what's interesting. You know, if you say liver to most people, they think it's the detox organ, which it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the major detox organ in your body. But if it weren't for your liver, you wouldn't be able to produce cholesterol and you wouldn't be able to repair from things and reduce inflammation. So testosterone is made by cholesterol. Testosterone also helps increase bone density and strength. Here's an interesting factoid. Low T is linked to, low T, people think of low T and they associate it with low sex drive, low ambition, low drive for life. Yeah, man boobs. And those are all obviously important things. But in terms of degenerative illness, low T is linked to Alzheimer's and dementia, coronary artery disease, ironically enough, and impotence, which is a big deal or a small deal.
I mean, that's
depending on the condition. Anyway,
I've sired 4 children, so
so it's not not a thing for you.
That's not why I'm on this podcast.
Gotcha.
Let's just say that.
No, I just think most people, especially like I said, men over the age of 40, and it's becoming more and more prevalent every single year.
Right.
And even if you don't have like clinically diagnosed low T, I think most men would want to know how to at least have adequate levels, if not, more than adequate levels. Optimal. Yeah. You don't want too much of anything, but optimal.
Agree to disagree on
I would say the average guy over 40 probably has suboptimal levels of
I'm over 40. I for
testosterone.
sure. I mean, and you've got me eating 3 Brazil nuts a day.
Yeah, so that's another great factoid. If you want to increase your testosterone levels, you got to eat the ingredients that your body makes those things out of.
Yeah, I got plenty of cholesterol, so now I just added the Brazil nuts.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the way to do it. I think one of the mistakes that we make with our culture today is we find out that we're deficient in something, and we just want to go take that thing. Like we want to. So if we have low testosterone, we just want to go take testosterone, either through injections or creams or different things. Same with women with progesterone and estrogen issues. They get these creams, or they take these bioidentical hormones that give their body the thing they're deficient in, which there's probably a time and a place for those applications. But if you just give your body the things that it needs naturally to then produce those things down the line, your body's like a master chef. It will put together exactly the meal or the nutrition that your body needs to be healthy. You just have to give it the ingredients.
Got it.
Right.
And so Brazil nuts contain selenium.
Right, which is
Jinx.
part of what's needed to create testosterone. Yeah, so studies show even just consuming, I think it's like 3 or 4 Brazil nuts a day, which is nothing. You can do that, and raw is better than cooked for reasons we're not going to get into today. But
I'm going to up it to 4 because I'm eating 3.
You could up it to 4. I mean, who doesn't want 25% more T?
I do
in their body.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Another thing I wanted to bring up was cortisol. So, since we're talking about inflammation and stress, most people know that cortisol is the stress hormone. But cortisol is also made by cholesterol. And if you have chronic fatigue, and that's, when I talk to patients, male, female, 40, 50, 60 range, the number one issue that people have is low energy.
Yeah.
Even if it's not diagnosable chronic fatigue,
right?
Most people that I talk to just don't have the energy that they wish they had. And it's typically a cortisol issue, because cortisol is it's made by your adrenal glands, and it's your stress hormone, and cortisol is not a bad thing. People want to vilify cortisol and say, get rid of cortisol. Cortisol is bad for you. It's not. Cortisol is your stress hormone. And if you didn't have cortisol, you wouldn't be able to run for your life in the situation. Like if you're being chased by a bear in the woods, you'd want cortisol. Right. Cortisol is going to save your life. It's the fight or flight hormone.
But cortisol should also know that if I'm super fat, I can't run for my life either. So it needs to kind of regulate a little bit.
Well, and that's the difference. Like cortisol is good in small spurts.
Yeah.
Again, like if you think back to, I always try to go back to, okay, how did we operate a couple thousand years ago? What did we eat? How did we move? How did we think? What was the timing of the nutrients that we consumed? How did all these hormones play a part in our daily life back then? And so when you apply that concept to cortisol, cortisol was helping hunters and gatherers either chase food or not be food.
Yeah.
One way or another. But it was really short. I mean, cortisol was elevated for maybe a few minutes at a time, and then you either caught dinner or you didn't.
Yeah.
Or you became dinner, one or the other.
Yeah.
And so cortisol is good for you. Cortisol increases blood pressure, increases heart rate. Cortisol decreases long-term immunity, but it increases short-term immunity factors like blood clotting factors.
For healing?
Yeah, because if the saber-toothed tiger takes a swipe at your leg and you're bleeding to death, you want clotting factors in your blood.
Right, but in my modern age, it's like I get in trouble at work and my blood's clotting immediately. Like,
that's the problem. Right. The average person today has mildly elevated cortisol levels all day long.
Yeah,
because they're working like crazy. They're chronically stressed. And so it's not the same amount as if you're being chased by a bear in the woods, but it's just slightly above where it should be.
Yeah.
And it creates chronic inflammation. I mean, you have chronic high blood pressure. You have chronic lowered immunity in terms of fighting long-term immune system type issues like disease or, viruses. You have increased clotting factors. You have shortness of breath. You have rapid heart rate, all the things. Poor digestion, because again, if you're being chased by a bear in the woods, your body doesn't need to be worrying about digesting,
your digestive
the jerky you just ate. It's worried about getting blood shunted to your muscles,
kind of like
so
when
that you can run away.
How your tummy. I just said tummy on live air.
Yeah, super manly.
Yeah.
Speaking of low T.
Low T. How many times a day do you say tummy? A lot. You have low T. Come here. I'll help you.
You have 4 kids, so you have a free pass.
You know what I mean? Like when you get in the water, your body's like, oh, I have to swim and divert all the energy to limbs. So good luck, digestion.
That's right. Yeah, so we need cortisol. We just have to keep it in check. Here's another interesting factoid. There was a study done, and they found that within the study group, the people with the highest cholesterol also had the best memory.
Really?
Which I think is fascinating, but if you just know a little bit about anatomy, it makes perfect sense because your brain is made up of a ton of cholesterol and fat. In fact, cholesterol, it's kind of like these wires from the mics to the receiver. There's this little rubber coating on the outside, and it helps speed up. Well, it's an insulator, but it also helps speed up conduction of either sound or electricity, right? Well, in your brain, it's the same way. In fact, almost all the nerves in your body have this kind of soft, almost rubbery coating on the outside of the nerves called myelin. And that myelin is predominantly made up of cholesterol.
Interesting.
And so it speeds up conductivity and it insulates the signals so there's not like an aberrant signal, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
So it makes sense that people with higher cholesterol would have better memories. They basically would have higher cognitive function, right?
Wow.
And obviously it's got to be the right cholesterol. That doesn't mean, you just live on bacon and potato chips the rest of your life. But again, it's just a testament to the fact that you need healthy fats in your body. Again, we talked about all cause mortality being the same with people with cholesterol ranging from 150 to 250, which I thought was interesting because a lot of people would be, if their cholesterol was 200 or 250, they would think they had high cholesterol. But according to studies, the all cause mortality rates are the exact same between people that have 150 cholesterol and 250 cholesterol. So you have a pretty big range. So just some factoids.
Yeah, those are good factoids.
I think we should talk about what to do about it.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's like the number one thing I'm curious about because I'm probably in that, 25 to 40% on their way to heart disease.
Well, I think most people are, just because of lifestyle. And it's not just a weight thing. There's a lot of sick, skinny people out there too. So we're going to talk about some lifestyle stuff. Again, the one thing I want to just say one more time before we get into some really practical steps is if you are a person who's listening and you've already been diagnosed with high cholesterol, high blood pressure, whatever it might be, and you've been given a diagnosis and then a prescription to go along with it. I'm not telling you to go get off your prescriptions. What I am saying is let's spend some time and investigate the cause.
Yeah.
I'm a chiropractor, and so technically my credentials are DC, Doctor of Chiropractic, but I've kind of modified that over the years to be DC, Doctor of Cause. Because as chiropractors, our fundamental belief is that the body is created whole and perfect, and that as long as there's no interference, your body is designed to live a long, healthy, happy life. And so our job is finding interferences or finding causes of issues, specifically to the nervous system. But I think you can apply that philosophy to anything in life. So if you have high blood pressure, let's not just take lisinopril for the rest of your life, which just covers the symptom. And typically your body ends up developing a tolerance for anyway, which means you have to take more and then a subsequent medication and then there's side effects. And let's ask the question, why is your blood pressure high in the first place? Is it because of stress? Is it because of diet? Is it because of sleep? Is it because of exercise? Is it because of all the above?
Yeah.
Right. And I know it's overwhelming. And I think that's probably the number one reason why people struggle.
Yeah.
Is because it's a heck of a lot easier just to pop a lisinopril and go about your day.
Right.
Versus actually dig into some of this lifestyle stuff and make changes.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it because probably nobody with credentials can. I have no credentials, but I know people, because I'll have conversations with my friends and we'll talk a little bit about like whether you believe it's like big pharma or the industrial medical complex or whatever. It's like there does seem, and I think a lot of people are kind of waking up to this, does seem like there's a lot of incentive not to prevent illness. There's a lot more financial incentive to treat it. I also think that probably people on that side of the idea, like, oh, let's just treat people and keep them alive longer. They probably have resigned themselves to be like, well, you're not going to fix people's minds. They're going to do what they want to do. So we might as well just keep them healthy and with their family. So they might even think they're doing a good thing. But where Marie and I landed recently after kind of just hanging out with you and Aaron, we're like, we just sort of like went with the flow, and kids came first, schedules came first, job comes first, health comes second, happiness comes before health because I'm getting dopamine from all these great foods, so dope. Because the foods are so great and I'm getting rewarded in an easy way. But my whole point in saying that is like, there's a crazy amount of censorship and like legal potential ramifications if anyone comes on and says, maybe this long-term 20 years of being on a medicine isn't great for you. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say it because you probably can't. Like, don't we all want to not be on medicines our whole life? Isn't that something like, isn't that something we can agree on? Like long-term medication of the human body isn't optimal. If we could find a way to treat it by a better lifestyle.
Right.
Like, let's take like anti-stress. Let's pretend there's a drug that can make it so you don't have stress. Wouldn't it be better to have a lifestyle that's not as stressful and know how to manage it on your own rather than just be like, take this pill to fix the symptom?
Right.
So anyway, it's interesting because even like iTunes or Google will censor doctors for saying like, I would like to help people get off medicine. It's crazy.
Yeah, you got to be super careful. I mean, if I post stuff on social media that talks about weight loss or the correlation between obesity and heart disease, which is obvious. I mean, there's not a person on the planet that doesn't just innately understand the fact that if you're obese and out of shape, you're going to be more susceptible to chronic disease. Yeah. Right. But if I put anything out there that claims that, hey, eating vegetables and praying or meditating every day, practicing mindfulness, exercise, doing breath work, hydration, doing those things is going to reduce your risk of degenerative illness, even though it's not even a scientific debate. It's just natural law. It's universal law. I mean, it gets censored like crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy
and it's
to me.
Ultimately, it's a money thing, unfortunately.
It has to be. Or they're so fearful of like class action lawsuits. Like, well, I got all my information off Facebook and they said if I took lavender, then I wouldn't have cancer, they're right. You know what I mean? And so they're trying to do a good thing in a really harmful way is what I feel like is happening. Well, I'm a layperson, so what do I got to lose?
and my mom's an ICU nurse and she has been for decades. And so we've got tons of great friends, family friends that are nurses, doctors, oncologists, anesthesiologists, cardiologists. And yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of them have the mindset, even though they personally live more like what we're talking about, interestingly enough. But when it comes to making recommendations for patients or treating patients, a lot of them have the mindset like, well, they're not going to do it anyway. So I'll just give them the drug.
Right.
Because at least the drug will keep them alive.
Yeah.
Even though it won't keep them healthy, And so, and that's fine. I mean, that's their choice.
And if it's a choice of die or stay alive, everyone's going to choose to stay alive. So there is potentially a place for it. But what we're talking about is like not staying alive, but really living. Yeah,
there's a difference.
Right. And that's what brought me to you.
Well, and there's a difference between lifespan and health span.
That's good.
People, if you ask the average person, do you want to live to 100? The average person says, no way.
No way.
Because when they think of people in their 80s or 90s, they think of
diapers,
nursing homes, diapers, baby food, wheelchairs. And that's not how we're designed to live anyway. In fact, studies show that we're designed to last at least 110, if not 120 years, with optimal health. And there are people around the world that are doing that. One of my favorite books about longevity is the Blue Zones book. It's all about these blue zones around the world. People like the Okinawans in Japan and the Vilcabambans in Central America. And there's these pockets of people, which interestingly enough, these pockets are typically not in very commercialized settings.
They're a little bit out rural.
They're kind of out in these villages or out in the bush. And so they're living in a very ancestral way. And by doing that, they're having, these people have the highest percentage of centenarians, or people that live past 100, compared to any other populations in the world.
That's amazing.
And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today is actually, common denominators in those cultures.
I love it.
As it results, or as it pertains to heart disease.
Teach away. Let's dive in.
Yeah, so I want to talk about nutrition, and this is probably the biggest question that I get asked is, what do I eat? What do I avoid? Yeah. Ultimately, just to make it simple for people, I operate with the food by God versus food by man concept.
Okay.
Man has made some great things throughout our history, but when it comes to food, the closer that we can eat it as it's found in nature, the better it's going to be for you. Okay. My philosophy is God made planet Earth, he made humans, and he made the two to go together.
Yeah.
So if we can just eat the food that we can find in nature, as close to as natural as possible, then it's going to be the most bioavailable for our body, meaning our body's going to be able to use it. I heard Dr. Jack Wolfson on a podcast recently talking about, if you took a caveman into a grocery store, what would he eat?
Yeah, he would go get the fruits and the vegetables.
He'd stay all around the perimeter, all the stuff because he would recognize an apple or a banana. He wouldn't even know
the box stuff is food.
Yeah, he's like, what is this?
Yeah. That's a good point.
So, food by God, not food by man. That being said,
although macaroni and cheese is a great invention, much admit it.
I'm not saying I'm perfect. There's some things that we've man-made that are fantastic, but not good for you.
Yeah.
So here's just some real basic things. You want your diet to be full of fruits, vegetables, plants. You want to really emphasize a diet that's full of healthy fats. And healthy fats are things like fats that come from nuts and seeds, coconut, anything coconut, extra, olive oil, things like that, grass-fed meat, free-range chicken, wild-caught fish, and organic and naturally raised protein sources. Meat's not the bad guy either, and that's something that a lot of people bring up to me, because there's been this association of red meat and heart disease, and that is true. But all of those studies that look at red meat and heart disease are red meat that was raised conventionally, like in a feedlot, and those cows were given grain instead of grass. And again, in nature, 2,000 years ago, and even just a couple hundred years ago, cows didn't eat grain; they ate grass. In fact, if you go out in the wild and you were able to find a cow just in the wild,
they would eat grass.
They're not looking for corn.
Yeah.
They're not looking for grain. So what happens is, when you feed cows something that they're not supposed to eat, i.e. grain, the same thing happens when you feed a human body what it's not supposed to eat, i.e. grain, a lot of it. It creates inflammation. And what it does to the meat tissue is it actually skews the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids.
Interesting.
I think a lot of people have heard about omega-3s and the value, and typically when you think of omega-3s, you think of fish.
That's
exactly. And there's a lot of fish. And actually, there was a study that I found I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's the GISSI prevention trial. And what they found is that people that consumed omega-3 fish oil on average had a 20% reduction of risk of heart attack or stroke. So fish oil, because of the omega-3s, can really help reduce your risk of heart attack or stroke. What's interesting though is if you look at grass-fed beef versus grain-fed beef, grain-fed beef has an omega-6 to 3 ratio of about 20 to 1. So 26s to every 1 omega-3, whereas grass-fed beef, it's more like 3 to 1.
Oh, wow.
Which is almost the exact same as most fish.
Wow. So
people think fish for omega-3s. You can actually get omega-3s from grass-fed beef. You can also get them from wild like harvested game. Yeah, like deer that you shoot in the woods or what have you. So meat's not the bad guy, but if you're eating conventional meat, that's not good for you. I would actually recommend people not eat meat at all unless they can eat their meat organically and naturally raised or harvested. Another food to include is low sugar fruits. So with the advent of Atkins diet and the keto diet and even the paleo diet to an extent, high carbohydrate or high glycemic foods and fruits have been kind of vilified. I will say that you should probably limit the amount of high glycemic fruits that you consume on a regular basis. So high glycemic basically just means the sweeter it is, the more sugar there is, you know.
Okay, I was going to ask how you tell without like looking it up.
Yeah, and the way you can tell is if it's really sweet. So like a Fuji apple versus a Granny Smith, obviously the Fuji has a lot higher glycemic index because it's a lot sweeter.
Got it.
Right, versus a Granny Smith. Same thing with like pineapple, mango, you know, anything that's really sweet like that is going to have
fruits.
all the stuff that we want. And
Yeah,
it tastes
exactly.
good.
So what about like blueberries? Because they're pretty sweet.
Yeah, so blueberries are a superfood. So there's just a handful of foods that I would consider to be superfoods that I try to consume on almost a daily basis.
Right, because you have blueberries like in every one of your smoothies.
Yeah, avocado would be in that category. Kale or spinach would be in that category. Blueberries is in that category. So even though there is some fruit sugar in blueberries, the ORAC score or the antioxidant value of blueberries is so high that the health benefit far outweighs any kind of fructose that's actually in the blueberries. And what's interesting is that if you were to have, you know, regular conventional, you know, like big agriculturally farmed blueberries right next to like wild caught or wild foraged blueberries that were totally organic that you found in nature, typically the wild ones are going to be a lot smaller and they're going to be way more bitter.
Really?
Yeah. So what we've done to fruit is, because people like sweet stuff and people get addicted to sugar, you know, Granny Smith apples aren't very popular, so there's not many around. You know, same thing with wild caught blueberries, same type of thing. So we've taken what people really want, which is the sweet stuff, and we figured out a way to make, you know, these supersized produce items. You know, apples are bigger than ever before. Blueberries are bigger than ever before. Grapes, same thing. Whereas in nature, they're a lot smaller, which means naturally, if you were to find them, again, think back to 2,000 years ago, if you came across some blueberries, they'd be really small and really bitter. So you probably wouldn't want to eat a whole bowl full of them. And they're so small that you wouldn't be able to do that anyway.
Wow.
So just, again, if you can eat it as close to the way it was found in nature, the better.
So wow, what I'm kind of hearing here is not just eating natural things, but eating natural things the closest to their natural state.
Right. And even the closest to the natural prevalence or availability.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
you're not going to eat all blueberries because it'd be hard to get.
So think about it this way. If you live in like an average climate in the wintertime, what you don't have available to you is a lot of fruit.
Right. Because fruit's only available like 3 or 4 months a year.
Right.
In a moderate climate.
And what's interesting is just, again, I just think it's so interesting how all this kind of works out in an ancestral format or viewpoint, is that fruits are the most abundant during the time of year when humans were the most active.
Would be working the most, right? Most daylight hours.
So you would need more carbohydrates when you're more active, right? You need less carbohydrates when you're less active. So fruits are less prevalent, less abundant or available during the months of the year.
And they're kind of a high burn food, right? Like quickly available energy compared to like winter food, which is like root vegetables, animals, and fat, which is like more slow burning, right?
Exactly. Yep.
We've been hanging out long enough now.
You're getting it.
I'm getting it. No, I love that. That's a great perspective.
So there's some just some real basic concepts when it comes to food.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, eat food by God, not food by man, and try to reduce the sugar. You know, obviously you want to stay away from processed foods, fast foods, you know, anything that comes through a window, you probably shouldn't put in your body.
Like that's a good rule.
If you eat
half my diet is off the list now.
Eat food from a plant, not that was made in a plant. You know, those are just some taglines.
Got it. Okay.
Another area where people can really
eat
real food, eat real food. You know, every time you put something in your mouth, just stop and look at it and ask yourself, is this real food? Could I find this thing out there?
Yeah.
And would it look like this? And, you know, I always say that, you know, people, in order to be really good with your nutrition, you got to be a good label reader. But what makes it really easy to become a black belt label reader is to eat foods that don't have a label.
There you go. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, an apple doesn't have a label. Why? Because it's an apple. That's all there is in it.
Yeah.
Same thing with, you know, meat, you know, as long as you're not getting processed meat. So I want to talk about supplements just for a minute, because people always ask me, you know, hey, Dr. Ryan, I have high blood pressure, I have high cholesterol, you know, I'm trying to live the healthy way and get off my medications and do all these things. What supplements can I take to really help me accelerate that process? And my response is always the same for everybody. And that is that you should always try to get your nutrition from food first. I'm not a big fan of people eating McDonald's and then going home and consuming $30 in supplements.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Your body doesn't want that, and it's just not natural. Plus, it's a giant waste of money and energy. So, a couple things. A good multivitamin, as simple as that may sound. This is from the Journal of American College of Nutrition. A good quality, like real food, whole food multivitamin. Decreased overall mortality and lowered cardiovascular risk and cancer risk in people that consumed a quality multivitamin on a regular basis.
Wow.
We talked about the omega-3s, so get a high quality omega-3 fish oil supplement. The hard thing with fish oil supplements is that unless you do some investigative research and you look at the company's website and where are they getting the fish from, how are they processing the fish, how are they actually packaging the capsules or the liquid, it makes a big deal, or it's a big deal. It makes a big difference because fish oil is from an animal, and just like you wouldn't buy a fish, leave it on the counter or leave it in the sun and then eat it like 6 days later.
Right.
You would never do that. A lot of the fish oil that we consumed is harvested and processed in that way.
Wow, really?
It's another reason why if you buy a really high quality fish oil, you have to refrigerate it. Because the capsules that they come in can only prevent oxidation of the oil for so long. Especially if that bottle of fish oil is like exposed to sunlight, or if it's in a hot temperature or an elevated heat temperature. So the best thing you can do, you don't have to freeze them, but keep them, at the very least, keep them in a pantry, like a really dark or a cupboard. Best case scenario is you'd keep them refrigerated.
Do you have a brand that you like?
Well, pretty much everything I take is from Max Living.
Okay.
So our clinic is a Max Living clinic, and
you trust them.
I really like the Max Living clinic or the Max Living stuff, just because I know the people that formulate all the supplements.
Like you actually personally know them.
I personally know them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I know the brand standards, and it's a guaranteed brand standard that all of our stuff is organic. It's non-GMO. They all pass the highest third-party testing, certifications. And so the Max Living stuff is what I've taken personally and what I've given my family for over a decade.
Okay, got it.
So there are some things that Max Living does not make that I recommend, people take, and we, carry some of that stuff in our office, or I give people resources for those things too. But for the basic stuff,
right,
like
we're talking about a good multivitamin. Max Living has one, so
Max Living's got one, yeah. So I also want to talk about vitamin D3. So this is really interesting. Vitamin D3, we all know, is the sunshine vitamin, and actually you don't get D3 from the sun. Your sunshine, coming back to cholesterol for a second, sunshine, real sunshine, turns cholesterol in your bloodstream into vitamin D3.
What?
Which is another reason why you need healthy cholesterol in your body.
Interesting.
Vitamin D is actually more of a hormone, but we call it a vitamin. But you get that vitamin from sun. You can actually get some vitamin D3 from animal products too, because animals are out in the sun, and so that vitamin D
is in their system.
Gets stored in their
I did know that.
in their flesh. Yeah,
that's why vegans have to take like a vitamin D and a vitamin B something else.
Yeah, and the more I look into it, I mean, if you were to compare a vegan diet to the standard American diet, vegan diet wins 100 times out of 100. However, I think there are some deficiencies in a vegan diet. I think you can do it, but I do think you probably have to be really strategic.
Right.
And you probably have to supplement with some things. And I'm just not convinced that it's the end all be all. So I do recommend.
But a diet high in vegetables and real
Yes.
food and clean meat.
And that's what I do like about it.
Yeah.
Is the emphasis on plant powered food.
Yeah. For sure.
So magnesium is another one. Magnesium is probably the most relevant supplement to your heart specifically, because your heart is a muscle, and magnesium targets or aids in muscle function probably more than any other system. But they actually did some studies, and they found that magnesium can help lower blood pressure. It can help increase the good cholesterol, or HDLs. Magnesium can also help lower triglycerides and lower inflammation, and it also helps your body regulate blood sugar.
There's so much. So I want you to do a whole podcast on magnesium. I want you to do a whole podcast on triglycerides, because I have so many things. Like my mom gave me some magnesium cream or something like that. And
which is great for like muscle soreness, but it's not the same as taking like an oral magnesium supplement.
Well, I've been eating it. No, I'm just kidding.
And there's a lot of different, we should do a whole segment,
but
because
seeing that there's so much to unpack with
there's magnesium glycinate, there's magnesium citrate, there's a bunch of different forms of magnesium too, and they're not all the exact same. Some of them have different.
It just, you started
benefits.
talking about that, and it triggered something in me, because my mom's like super into magnesium all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, I want to know more about that. But it is good for your heart, so I should be eating it.
Yeah, and the average person. So I just read this article from Green Med Info, SAYER-G, and it's talking about how magnesium is the miracle mineral, and just so many different things depend on magnesium in your body in terms of optimal health and function.
Wow.
The problem is, because of what we've done to crop methods in America, the soil is so deplete and deficient of magnesium that it's almost impossible to get enough magnesium just through diet alone. So in my opinion, it's one of those supplements that probably most people should take on a regular basis.
Wow.
It's almost impossible to get it, even if your diet's impeccable. Probiotics are another one. There's a European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that people that took probiotics on a regular basis had higher levels of HDL, or high density lipoproteins, by up to 12 points, which is pretty sweet. I mean, that's awesome. A pretty big increase just by taking a probiotic. And it's interesting because most people think probiotics are just for digestion.
That's what I think.
But probiotics have been shown to increase HDL, which will also help lower LDL, or the bad.
A podcast on probiotics would be great.
And then finally, vitamin B complex. So I think most people associate vitamin B with energy. Vitamin B or B vitamins are your energy vitamins, which is totally true.
To most people. That's what I think it is.
Yeah. And that's absolutely true. But the Council for Responsible Nutrition found that taking a vitamin B complex helped to lower homocysteine levels, which lower the risk of cardiovascular disease. And homocysteine is an inflammation marker.
Got it.
So B vitamins are not just for energy. B vitamins can help also lower inflammation, which therefore, in turn helps you lower the risk. I know
I'm going to ask a question here that everyone's thinking. So try not to be too harsh on us normal people, but like when I go to Costco and I get the Zip Fizz that's filled with vitamin B for energy, is that okay, or is that not okay?
I mean, I don't love that form specifically.
Okay.
And it's just...
Thank you for being so soft.
Yeah. It's not because of the B vitamins that are in there. It's all the other stuff that's in there too.
Got it.
So you could easily just take a B complex supplement.
Right. So take your vitamins as boring as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No fizz, no zip, no color. Got it. Understand.
No taste.
Yeah, no taste. Perfect.
Yeah. And better yet, consume foods that have this stuff.
Yeah.
Even though it's kind of hard to get all your nutrition from food.
Well, I went and looked at a cow field, and none of them had like vitamin B12 on the side or anything. Like, hey, this is what I contain. So you're gonna have to help us with that a little bit, because I don't know. Yeah.
And that's why we're doing this.
Great.
Ultimately, when it comes to supplements and even nutrition, my recommendation, the longer I do this, I'm in this profession of, or in this world of chiropractic, wellness, functional medicine, the longer I'm in it, the more I'm convinced that people need specific nutrition testing. There's just so many variables. I think even just 100 years ago, we could have gotten away with a lot more cookie cutter recommendations for people.
Yeah.
And although there are universal principles when it comes to nutrition and lifestyle that apply to all of us, like the whole eat food by God, not food by man principle, that is true. But because of all the history that our genes and our cells have incurred, either from us or previous generations, in a lot of people, there are deficiencies or toxicity levels that had nothing to do with what you did to yourself.
Interesting.
But it was from what your parents did, or even your grandparents. And so one of the things we do for our patients in our clinic is we do advanced nutrition testing, where we look at vitamin deficiencies or vitamin levels, nutrient deficiencies, minerals. We look at heavy metal toxicity.
You do that through the hair.
Well, there's a few different mediums. Yeah, we can do through the hair, which looks for micronutrient deficiencies and heavy metal toxicity. We also do a urinalysis that looks at 36 different metabolic pathways to help show us whether or not you're a fast oxidizer or a slow oxidizer. If you have high inflammation levels, if you have leaky gut, if you have high cortisol levels. It's just super insightful, because then you can really dial in exactly what supplements you need, and maybe even get rid of some of the supplements you're taking that you don't need.
Got it. Which is why you haven't made any recommendations to me yet, because my testing isn't back yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
I mean, I hesitate to just tell everybody, here's what you need to take.
But I am taking curcumin.
Well, yeah, and curcumin. So there are some things that are just like, if you have pain of any kind, curcumin's one of those things that we don't need to do a test. We have the result of the test, which is your body's telling us you have pain.
Got it.
That's the
Great.
that's the test.
That's the test. Mission accomplished.
Pain represents inflammation, and curcumin is anti-inflammatory. It's the most potent natural anti-inflammatory, dietarily, that you can consume. So taking a curcumin supplement can really help with.
So for someone like me who
pain.
obviously has inflammation issues, that's a good.
Yes, totally. Again,
and I'm taking the Max Living one, and I've shed 11 pounds in 2.5 weeks, and I do feel way better.
That's awesome.
Joints in the morning, going down the stairs, back, pain. I get these like headaches from my like rhombus, like starts my rhomboid or whatever, and it climbs up the back of my neck. Since I've been getting adjusted regularly, none of those I haven't had one headache since we've started. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're kind of running out of time, but just a couple more little tidbits I think that people could apply that would make a huge difference in terms of their risk or recovery from heart disease. Number one has to do with breath work. So just breathing, and this is something simple, easy, free that you can do. There was a study that was done by Michigan State University, and they found that by doing deep box breathing, and box breathing is something I'm really passionate about. It's something that the Navy SEALs are trained to do in order to lower cortisol levels in times of stress, which is probably like their whole life, But box breathing is simply, you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold it for 4 seconds, or a 4-second count. So it's like inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And it just forces you to slow your breathing down. And so what this study found is that just by doing that, even for just a couple of minutes, it lowered blood pressure, lowered heart rate, even lowered blood sugar.
What?
And ultimately it resulted in lower cortisol, which is your stress hormone.
How many times a day can you do it?
I mean, you can do it anytime you feel stressed out. So I'm a big fan of taking a power nap in the middle of the day, but I don't have a whole lot of time. And so typically my power naps are like 12 minutes. And a lot of people have trouble going from like, fifth gear to dropping it down to park, just for 12 minutes.
Right. And so your body's so optimized, you're like, I'm going to shut down for 12 minutes in this closet.
Right. But what I have found over the years is that by doing box breathing, I can get to sleep within under 2 minutes.
That's
even
incredible.
If I go from, so a lot of times, I'll go in the back office, like an exam room, and I'll just lay down for like 12 minutes and I'll do box breathing. And a lot of times I'll listen to binaural beats, which we don't have time to talk about today, but it's basically just a way to get your brain into an alpha state.
I literally, dude, our lives are so different. Like, to get a 12-minute nap in the middle of the day, I'd have to go change my clothes, put on a movie that I've seen 100 times.
Steel Magnolias, probably.
Have someone kind of cuddling me and we're so different. I can't wait to be on that level.
That's where we're headed though. That's the whole point of this podcast, but breath work. So that's the thing. So box breathing, just do it. Just try it today. Try it today. Do it for 1 minute.
You just gave me a great tip that I can actually go do right now.
And if you can do it with your eyes closed, like I've done it in the cab of my truck many times, like in between either patients or shifts. You can do it anywhere, and I promise you feel extremely relaxed afterward. Last one I want to talk about is just a nod to chiropractic. This is one of my favorites, but this actually came from, the reason why I'm bringing it up now is this is straight from the Paleocardiologist book by Dr. Jack Wolfson. And so he's, giving a lot of credit to chiropractic, and he references this study that was done in the Journal of Human Hypotension. And what they found is that when patients got adjusted at C1, which is the very top bone in your neck, it's right underneath your ear and your skull. When patients got adjusted at C1, those patients experienced a blood pressure reduction by 17 points. which is massive. It was more than the drug that they were comparing it to.
Wow.
So they had this one test group that took a blood pressure drug.
And this is peer reviewed, documented.
Well, this is from
Journal.
Yeah, Journal of Human Hypotension. And so the reason why that works, or the reason why that's a thing, is because your vagus nerve comes out at the very top of your spine. And so some people may have heard of this concept called vagal tone or sympathetic tone. Basically, vagal tone or sympathetic tone has to do with all the autonomic reflexes of your body, like heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, all these things that you don't really think about, digestion, same thing. And so by getting that bone adjusted, if it's out of alignment, and that's not to say that, if you have high blood pressure, just go get adjusted at C1 and bam, it's going to work like that for everybody 100% of the time. You have to have a subluxation or a misalignment at C1 for this to be relevant
Effective,
or applicable. But I just think it's fascinating because most people think getting adjusted by a chiropractor is just for neck pain or back pain.
100%, that's what I thought.
So even if there was only a correlation and it wasn't 100% causation, I think it's still, really compelling.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I mean, that would be, and I've actually seen this clinically. I've had several patients over the years that didn't come in because of blood pressure issues, but after getting their spine adjusted and correcting the structure of their spine, experienced changes with their blood pressure.
Yeah, but I do got to say, you got to go to the right chiropractor. It's something I'm learning being on this journey because I've had other chiropractors pop my back. That's what, they popped my back, and I had some relief and it felt good. But I remember coming in to you, and the first thing we did was x-rays. The second thing we did is educate me, and you use this analogy. You said corrective chiropractic is like moving your teeth with braces. It's slow over time, so the soft tissue can have time to create a new memory and hold that adjustment. No one, 15 chiropractors before you, no one had ever talked about that. I have back pain. I go in, they pop my back. That's it.
Yeah.
So people got to understand too, you need to go, this is me talking. So this is my recommendation, Daniel's recommendation. Go to a chiropractor that actually wants to do corrective and preventative care long-term. And you should be ready, in my opinion. So I'm new on this journey, but I have a good mind to know what's bullcrap and what's not. And when you came in, you educated us so well on this is why it will work. And you showed me my x-rays. And you're see this bone. And I could even, as a layperson, I'm yeah, that one's definitely Wonkosaurus, You're yeah, we're going to change it over time. It's very logical. It all lines up. So just to anyone listening, get a great chiropractor who believes in that fundamentally and will work with you long-term.
Yeah, and people always ask, well, how do I find that? Because you're not going to just see that on someone's website. So I always tell people, number one, if you can find a Max Living chiropractor, that's the network of chiropractors that I'm a part of, and there are very strict guidelines and standards that Max Living chiropractors have to follow.
Okay, good.
And even just specific to chiropractic. So, Max Living practices the 5 essentials. So it's more like functional medicine, or what I like to call whole person health, whole person healthcare. Because we focus on nutrition and detoxification and mindset
and function,
fitness.
Getting your body to heal itself and function properly.
Yeah, all the stuff that we're talking about today. But even just in terms of chiropractic, there are very strict standards and guidelines. And so if you can find a Max Living chiropractor, that would be my first preference or recommendation. You can go to maxliving.com and just search in your zip code.
Yeah.
If you can't, or if there's nobody in your area, then I would at the very least make sure that the chiropractor you go to takes x-rays.
Got it.
And preferably pre and post x-rays, because my mantra is you can't manage what you don't measure.
Yeah,
and that's why we tested your nutrition.
Yep.
And we're waiting to get those numbers back because we can't just base it on the scale or how you feel.
Yeah.
Those are valid, but they're very limited scopes of evaluation. So if we can measure things, even your spine, because you might get adjusted and 2 adjustments later, you feel fantastic. Mm-hmm. But chances are the structure of your spine didn't correct after 2 adjustments.
Yep.
Most often it takes time, you know, and at some point we've got to reevaluate and actually measure the changes. So if you can't find a Max Living chiropractor, find someone that takes x-rays at least, and even better, pre and post x-rays.
Great recommendation.
Yeah.
Love it.
So that's it. That's heart disease.
It's amazing. I mean, what I feel like, one last thing. So what I took away box breathing. I took away a really much bigger understanding that cholesterol is not just the bad guy, that there's really the biggest culprit that I heard that I related to was high sugar makes your body generate extra cholesterol and then it oxidizes it.
Yeah.
And that is really the thing that you want to avoid. So Can you give us like 3 takeaways? Do these 3 things to bring, and I won't even say lower cholesterol, to align your cholesterol, optimize it.
Yeah.
3 things. So if I had 3, I would say sleep and stress management, like good sleep, and then manage stress with one technique you gave us was box breathing, lower your sugar and eat real food. And then 3rd, move.
Yeah, exercise. Yeah, and that's one that we didn't have a whole lot of time for, but I do have a neat little study factoid since you brought it up.
Yeah.
So we all know that exercise is good for us, but according to the National Institute of Health, people, I'll just read it, 39% reduction in cardiovascular morbidity or death, and 24% reduction, morbidity is disease, 24% reduction in mortality, which is death, in subjects with exercise expenditures of more than 2,000 kilocalories per week, or calories. We call them calories, but they're actually kilocalories. So if you burn more than 2,000 calories a week from exercise, then you have a 24% reduction.
That's like 285 a day.
It's not that much.
It's not that much.
It's not that much. To give people a reference point, walking a mile burns 100 calories of energy. So that's just walking a mile.
Right.
So that's
a conservative, dependable number.
And you don't have to be on a track or a treadmill. Walking a mile, in your office or around the house
stairs,
or whatever.
Parking lots.
So that's activity. Activity doesn't just count if you're at the gym. In fact, I'd recommend going outside instead of the gym anyway. But it just goes to show you that moving your body, an object in motion stays in motion.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think that applies to our health too. So yeah, exercise. So I would say, to confirm what you said, reduce sugar, get enough sleep and reduce stress, which is kind of the same thing, I feel like. One more factoid. You brought up sleep. Listen to this. This is according to the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine. People that average less than 7 hours of sleep per night are at a greater risk of having a heart attack.
Yeah, I sleep 6 hours.
Is that you bleeping out a cuss word that you wanted to say?
Yeah, it was a big revelatory cuss word. Son of a beep. Yeah, I sleep 4 to 6 hours a night.
Well, and here's the thing. In America today, it's almost like a badge of honor if you get less sleep and you work harder.
Brag about it. I'm like, I was up.
I used to do that too. It's like, I can stay up till 11 or 12. I get up at 4 and I'm just like, cranking full speed ahead.
Yeah.
And that's great, but it's also the exact recipe for burning out your adrenals, your thyroid.
Maybe I should start being like, you know what? I'm a high risk for heart disease. Check it out.
Yeah.
Idiot.
So the point is, sleep is when your body repairs.
Yeah.
It's like the pit stop.
So
you're in this race of life. If you're not in the pit stop long enough, you're going to leave without enough fuel in the tank.
So I have elevated levels of cholesterol putty in my system, repair putty. I have no time for my body to use the repair putty, and an excess of sugar and stress oxidizing it and forcing it to create more. And yet most of us would just give me a drug to stop that rather than complete.
Or multiple.
Yeah.
Multiple.
That's eye-opening.
Yeah. So I know it's not easy. So my recommendation is whenever we, go through stuff like this, I know there's a million action steps or takeaways from today, but, just pick one thing. Don't try to do it all. Just pick one thing, focus on the one thing. Gain confidence and mastery in that one thing, even if it's just drinking more water or getting an extra hour of sleep every night, just one thing. And then gaining victory over that one thing is gonna make you feel so good that you're going to want to do it again. Success begets success.
And this is your motivational heart. So don't lose heart.
It is.
Do one thing. And when you can do the one thing, it'll be confirmation to you that you haven't lost that heart, and keep going.
Right. Make yourself do hard things. I always tell people, the reason why I get up early in the morning and I exercise and I push myself is I want to do hard things on my own terms so that I'm equipped and prepared to do hard things on someone else's.
Wow, that's really good.
Because inevitably, life's going to punch us in the face. And for some of us more than others.
Yeah.
And it's inevitable. It's going to happen. But if you're prepared, and I don't just mean physically prepared. So I don't mean that life's going to punch you in the face and all of a sudden you're going to have to do 500 burpees. Mm-hmm. But because you did 500 burpees on your own accord, now all of a sudden when you're faced with a really tough situation at work or in life or with family or marriage or kids, because you have that mental fortitude that it took to do the 500 burpees from before, you get to translate or transfer that same mental fortitude to this other situation, right? Because you have a strong heart, because you have a strong will. You developed and you refined and defined your mindset, to be able to withstand anything.
That's awesome. So if you've been worried about heart disease, which obviously statistics say a lot of us are going to have to wrestle with it.
Hey, we should be. If you're not, you're probably the 1 out of 4.
Yeah.
Like you should be.
Yeah. So don't lose heart. Try something. Start, at least get one of these things. More sleep, less stress, less sugar, right? And move a little bit. And if you can, do all 4.
Yeah. Do it all.
That's really good,
But
man.
at least do one.
Yeah. I'm committed to 1, but I'll try to get all 4. The hardest one for me is going to be stress.
Yeah.
And then second's going to be sugar. The dopamine salad thing is helping, actually. I look forward to healthier food more often, but dude, I love simple carbohydrates. And I know that is actually sugar.
Everyone does.
Oh my gosh, I love them so good.
Well, it's quick energy. Yeah. I mean, you get a dopamine hit from the bad stuff, so your brain likes it.
Yeah, man.
So you want to do more of that.
But things are improving. 11 pounds down in just over a couple of weeks. I feel better, so we'll keep going. I'm going to implement these things, and then we'll talk again next week.